And we're going to start out in London. Game of the week, Pats Jags. The Jags are staying in London. The European fans do get to see Drake May in his second NFL start. You think it's going to be a good one?
I think it's going to be better than most anticipate, which is, I guess, a pretty low bar considering these two teams. But yeah, I think there's a really interesting kind of case here for Drake May, and looking at the difference between Drake May and Jacoby Brissett and how the Patriots are going to run their offense. And something we talk about all the time on this show is disruption. And for those unfamiliar, it refers to plays that either have perfect coverage or pressure arrives early enough that the quarterback cannot go through his progression. And it's mostly quarterback drawn. Obviously, that defense is going to be influenced. Your own schematic elements and the health of your offensive line and your wide receivers all play into it, but it is mostly quarterback driven. And Jacoby Brissett, a good proof of this is Jacoby Brissett has been hanging around basically the 45 to 50% disruption mark. And I'd also add just the base rates here are very important to keep in mind. An offense is effectively adding 0.6 points per play anytime they are not in disruption, and they're losing 0.6 points per play when facing disruption. Jacoby Brissett has been hanging around in this 45 to 50% zone every single week. Given the state of the Patriots' offensive line, that makes a lot of sense. They've really been probably the worst unit in football. Drake May in week one, and again, it's only 1 week, so we have to take that with some grain of salt, was at 33%. That's a huge, huge difference, right? Again, thinking about 17% of your dropbacks or 15% of your dropbacks when we're talking about a 1.2 points per dropback ratio. That's a big deal. So I think in looking at May and how he's going to operate this offense, I think they're going to be able to stay in structure a little better. I think that we're starting to see even some of the Patriots' weapons start to develop a bit. Demario Douglas has graded out extremely well in our separation metrics. He had one of his best games. Kendrick Bourne is back. He has traditionally been a darling of a lot of our stats. He I think can produce. And when you look at it from this frame, you're going up against a Jaguars defense, which plays a bunch of man coverage and not particularly well. They've struggled to generate a pass rush. They have the 7th worst pressure rate. And you're going up against a quarterback who maybe has a little more time. He's processing a little better than Jacoby Brissett and certainly can throw a great deep ball, another area where the Jaguars have struggled. And when you kind of see it from this perspective, I don't think it would be so crazy for May to outplay Lawrence in this game or May to play well enough to kind of carry New England to a win. And the market is really kind of pricing this, especially given that this is a neutral site game, as there's a huge gap between these two teams. And I think there's a non-zero chance that Drake May is a lot better than the market's anticipating, and certainly a lot better than Jacoby Brissett. And that's an angle I'm particularly interested in playing, whether it's even on New England money line or kind of playing Drake May overpassing and an SGP around that of his overpassing and New England winning. I think that's a particularly intriguing angle, though. I'm curious how you see the other side of the ball, and there's obviously plenty more to go into this game.
Yeah, I think it's the initial lines we're recording on a Wednesday that I've seen are around 205 yards from May, and that seems low against the Jacksonville pass defense that has really struggled this year. You talked about low pressure rate. They do have some guys who can win in Josh Hines-Allen and Trayvon Walker, who's having the best year of his young career. But the secondaries really struggle, and they're a heavy man coverage defense. And you have some injuries back there. Tyson Campbell hasn't played. He's been on IR. He started practicing again, but it feels kind of doubtful that he's going to be back for this game. So you've got Ronald Darby on the outside, Monteric Brown on the outside, Darnell Savage down the slot. And the Patriots offense has been bad, right? But I do think there's some upside in this matchup with a low line for May, especially to Demario Douglas, who you mentioned. I think May talked about after the game about him being a guy you want to target against man coverage. You look at some of the numbers he has this year, 25% target rate against man coverage, highest on the team. He had 7 first-read targets last week in May's first game, which was over double any other receiver. So I do like that angle. And honestly, I think the Jaguars could have a nice game on the other side as well on offense. And this could be a little bit higher scoring than we think.
Yeah, I think you also mentioned right, the man splits for Demario Douglas. Another guy I'd look for on Jacksonville, and a prop I like is Christian Kirk, who we saw this last year. We've seen it a lot. Also, New England plays a bunch of man. He has seen a pretty high rate of targets against man, as well as the blitz, and the Patriots have blitzed a bunch as well. I think he probably is the beneficiary, and it's like kind of a little bit of a game right now of like, is it a Gabe Davis game? Is it a Brian Thomas game? Is it a Christian Kirk one? But I think Kirk probably has the best matchup in the slot, and given the Patriots' tendencies. So I think whether you want to play that back, meaning May, if you want to build on my first angle of like May passing, the New England winning, and then the Jaguars kind of passing, bringing it back through Christian Kirk, I like that. I think his props are also a little bit mispriced given the Patriots' tendencies. But look, I think that you always want to think of the frame that the market's presenting, right? It's one thing to have this conversation if the game is a pick-em, and to say like, oh, Drake may this, Drake may that. It's the fact that they're such heavy underdogs, and this game is not even in Jacksonville that kind of allows me the confidence to bet on May. But as you said, I think the Jaguars can certainly score here, and it would not be shocking for them to kind of put together finally a good offensive performance.
Yeah, it's kind of shocking. All the talk about Jacksonville has been how dysfunctional they are, and then in a neutral site game, 5.5-point favorites that's a lot. That's a lot for how many issues they've had. So just to recap, it sounds like you're on Patriots money line, Patriots alts, May alts, anything else in there.
That's right, and then some Christian Kirk on the other side of the ball as well.
I like it.